everyone. To the Carson City Culture and Tourism Authority Board of Directors meeting. It's Monday, August 8th, 4 o'clock. We're in the Carson City Community Center at the Robert Bob Kroll Boardroom. Linda, can I get a roll call?
Yes, Mike Jones,
Here.
Bobby Rader, Stacy Giomi. We have a quorum.
Thank you. If I could ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to item 5, approval of the minutes of the July 11th, 2022 CTA board meeting. Are there any changes or corrections that a board member will see at this time? If not,
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. With that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. At this time, any board member can ask, or did I pass public comment? You did. I did. Todd, you got to help me sometimes. Okay. So we'll ask for any public comment. I don't see any, so I think we'll move on from public comment. Let it be noted that board member Reynolds has now joined the meeting. Now we'll move on to the consent agenda. Would any board member like any portion of the consent agenda pulled for individual discussion? Would any member of the public like anything pulled for discussion? With that, if I can get a motion to pass?
I'll move to accept the consent agenda as is.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. With that, we'll, for discussion only, presentation and discussion regarding the 2022 am I saying that right? Pater Carson City ride held in May of 22. David, I think you're gonna.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Joan. For the record, David Peterson, Executive Director with Visit Carson City. So on the WebEx, we have Carlos Perez, who is the owner of Bike Monkey, who put on the amazing event this past May. And as per the original agreement that we had, sponsorship agreement that ended June 30, he is presenting the results from the May 2022 event for us. So Carlos, I see you. I'm hoping you can hear us. Deborah has the presentation up on the television, and I'm going to turn it over to you now to walk us through a recap of the event.
Okay, great. Thank you, David. I have to ask for a slide to advance because I do not see the slides on my WebEx presentation.
You will, yeah. Just let Deborah know to advance. So right now it's just on the home slide. Okay,
great. Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to speak today. You know, some of you may or may not know that Stetna's Pater Carson City is an event that was originally supposed to take place in 2019. It had been 2 years old at that point, but was a road-based event out of North Star. And we did make our way down into the valley and up Mount Rose. But at that time, there was a huge surge in the popularity of gravel races, and I came to the board in Carson City, and I pitched the idea of bringing a large-scale gravel event to the valley, and that opportunity was given to us, and then we had a pandemic, and then we had fire, and so things just got pushed out. I just want to say thanks for the patience, because the opportunity that we finally capitalized on this past May was heralded as one of the best operated gravel events on the entire gravel calendar in the US, and it sold out. We actually oversold it because we knew there would be attrition due to the delay that we had from when COVID began, and we finally were able to serve up the experience that people had paid for. But Carson City stuck with us, and we were able to pull it off. So we had a pretty amazing experience. The next several slides are some photos of that. So if you want to slowly scroll through those, you can kind of see what it actually looked like. We started this event and finished it at Fuji Park in Carson City, and we crossed over to the east, and people rode through the Pine Nut Mountains. It's an area that actually, given the delay from when we imagined the event and actually brought it to fruition, gave us the opportunity to really fine tune the route. It took us a lot of driving, some flat tires, a lot of effort to finally tune this route and make it what it was. So if you go to slide 9, there's kind of a summary of the by the numbers. Maybe one after this one, the next one. So we had 662 riders register, and we probably had another 60 or 70 that asked to be put on the wait list after that. We technically were permitted for a 500-person event, but we knew that the attrition would bring us down to that number. And so we kind of threaded the needle on that one and stayed within our permit requirements, but were able to allow us to maximize that opportunity for people to come and have that experience. There were 103 residents who participated from Nevada State. 559 were registered from out of state. There's a state list later on that we can kind of run through, but our numbers showed that there were close to 500 actual competitors in this event, and the survey that we conducted showed that on average people brought at least one person with them, bringing that total attendance at the festival, not including festival vendors and their team members, up to 1,000 people that participated in the inaugural event this past year. Based on that survey, we also estimated that 438 room nights were generated. And those are the high level numbers that we have. If you skip ahead, we list out some of the states, the people that participated. So not just from the United States, but from even around the world, Antwerp, as you can see. We have a summary that we can, I think I may have emailed that, but we can email that shows how many people actually came from each of these locations. This is an opportunity that really came about by the fact that the brainchild of this race was Peter Stetina. And Pete was formerly a professional road cyclist who raced in the Tour de France for a couple of years with both BMC and Trek Segafredo racing teams, and participated in the Tour of California before he decided to dedicate himself to the sport of gravel racing right at the correct time, because he is actually the winningest gravel racer in the circuit right now, and a very popular person. He just had twins, actually, so otherwise he'd be on this call with us today to thank you for the opportunity. So we put on a lot of bike races. We have been doing this for close to 17 years now, and one of the largest events that we produce is Levi's Grand Fondo. We have smaller events that are around 300 people, Levi's being at its peak 7,500 participants in Sonoma County. So we really run the gamut of small scale to large scale events. This event itself, if you go to the next couple of slides, was when we conduct our survey, we ask questions of participants. What was their experience rated 1 to 5 in all of the various areas where we served them? this event, and this is just a snapshot of the 150 or so survey responses that we got. Snapshot tells us that this was by a pretty decent margin, the best experience that we've delivered in our history. Everything just nailed it. And it's really cool to see that people walked away with such an amazing experience because talk about it and it's going to resonate. And so the numbers are really something that we're going to look at controlling as we move forward, because whatever we set that at, we will be looking at a sold out event in the future. So it's really exciting to have something like that, especially because it is the only large scale gravel race in the entire state of Nevada. So it's really something that kind of plants a flag in this region and belongs to Carson City. So some of the things, we got some pretty cool comments. There were many of them. The next slide shows a really cool shot top down of them passing by the Carson River. And then these are some of the comments that we extracted out of the survey responses. The next slide shows a shot of the start line in Fuji Park with Peter Stettner standing out in front. This is a guy that really made it all happen. He came to us and asked us to create something cool. And then over the years, we collaborated on continuing to make it better. And we finally turned his event into a gravel race and moved it to Carson City. We found its sweet spot. So some of the things that make this event unique, well, being in the Pine Nuts, if you move to the next slide, I list out some of the things that really stand out for Stettner's Pay Dirt. The Pine Nuts obviously is an amazing backdrop, really a ride. Most people spend their time pedaling when they're at an event, right? The majority of their time is on the bike. And so we always make sure that all of our events feature something signature to the region, something special, something memorable. The Pine Nuts gave us that. It has a pretty amazing backdrop no matter which direction that you look. It's an area that prior to us producing this event really did not see much cycling activity. But when we announced that this ride was going to take place in that BLM region and we published the route, we saw people starting to make special trips out here to go and practice the route. So some ancillary room nights, I'm sure, were generated from this event that we don't track directly, but it does happen. And we could see that because we're able to monitor how many people actually ride on these roads because of this software platform called Strava, where we can actually keep an eye on things. And where previously there wasn't any activity, there was a lot more activity, and people would post their rides and say that they were excited for the event coming up. So the Pine Nuts was very signature to the event. Additionally, this event had a women's only cash purse, and there's a storyline behind that, which we could get into later if there's time. But the idea was to really put a focus on female participation and really, kind of do a right where the sport of cycling has, typically, focused on the professional men racers by really focusing and putting that focus on female participation. And it was pretty cool. We saw a really large female participation turnout, larger than any of our other events for that reason, which was a great thing. And obviously they're bringing partners who are also participating in that experience. At the post race, we had some pretty exciting activities that are ancillary and kind of out of the norm. We even had a mechanical bull ride, which was very popular, much to my surprise. I didn't expect it, but it was one of the signature experiences at the event, and people really enjoyed it. As I said before, it's the only large-scale gravel race in the entire state. It explores 2 iconic mountain ranges in a single event, because not only do we explore the Pine Nuts, but we finish on the Carson Trail reaching up to Highway 50. And so it has a really cool single track finish. And at the end of the race, the top participants, the winners, actually won a silver ingot. And it was something that we felt would be a really neat thing for us to do, given that we're in the Silver State. And so I myself actually learned how to pour silver, and we made custom ingots and gave them out to the top participants in various categories. And there's a picture of that later on. The next slide shows you another shot of the pine nuts from, I'm sorry, of the Sierras from the pine nuts. And then the next one is Pete's mechanic, Big Tall Wayne, on the mechanical bull. At the end of the day, everybody just gathered around this thing. It was a huge spectacle, and we made a lot of noise with it. We had a professional announcer barking about it the entire afternoon. It was a real blast. And then on the next slide is a shot of the silver that we poured and awarded to people. And so they actually got 2 ounces of silver. And that was another huge talking point for the event. So these kind of things really go a long way to building the character of the experiences that we create for our participants. We really dig deep and try to go out of our way to award people with something substantial, something memorable, and this definitely took the cake there. So what does the future hold? On the next slide, I kind of touch on some of these things. There's always minor technical improvements that we're going to make. That goes without saying. We don't really believe that we can ever produce a perfect event, but we can get closer to that by tuning things a little bit here and there. And so that's part of the reason why we have a survey. So all of those things that were marked as 3s, we pay attention to those, and we find ways of improving things for people that maybe they felt like could have been done a little bit better. So we listen to those survey results and we respond to them. We will be increasing participation. We try to be very careful when we increase participation, because one of the strongest things that any event can hold is a capacity that sells out quickly, because that only improves and increases that urgency in registration. If we outgrow that too quickly, we can do 2 things. We can damage the experience for people by having too many folks where we haven't increased services appropriately. And we can also hurt or hinder our ability to have a sold out event because it doesn't sell out quick enough. And so there's a measure that we have to make in increasing participation. But we know that that's important to Carson City as a partner, is to bring more people to the region. We just have to make sure that we do it intelligently. And so that's the whole reason for grow steady and monitor success. So each year we pay attention to what the number should be the following year and adjust accordingly. And then additionally, just leveraging regional improvements year over year. So there are organizations that work on roads, that work on trails, that work on infrastructure in the area, and we stay in touch with them. For instance, the trails organization that builds the single track that we rode in the event, we made a moderate donation to them this year, and we'll continue to do so in the future because that's a feature of the event. And it's important to us that all of the people and partners that contributed in some way, whether directly or indirectly, to the success of the event are supported by us and are also queried for opportunities to explore other areas. So if there are new trails being developed or new roads to explore or things that we can use facility-wise to heighten the experience for our participants each year, that we're always looking at that and trying to leverage those. So the event returns in 2023. The date that we have selected is May 20th. And I open it to questions, comments, concerns, feedback. David, I think maybe I kick it back over to you, but essentially I just want to say we're very grateful for the opportunity, and we're looking forward to continuing to work with and receive the support of Carson City to produce this event for the foreseeable future.
Thank you, Carlos. Real quick, Deborah, if you don't mind, would you bring up the second document just to show the board? Yeah, perfect. So if you go another page or 2 maybe, Carlos referred to the sort of allocation by country, by state, and that should be one more page. So this just gives you guys an idea of where these folks came from. within Nevada and then outside of Nevada. So Carlos had referenced that earlier in his presentation. So no, I got to say it was pretty cool being out there. I think Fuji was a perfect location, perfect venue. People really like the way that was set up, and I'm excited to see this continue. But I'll defer to Chair Jones if there are any questions.
Yeah, we'll open it up to the board, Carlos, but overall, I think it was a pretty nice first event, first try for the project. You mentioned reasonable growth a year and not growing it too fast. What is, I guess I got two questions. What do you think reasonable growth would be for next year? And is really the marketing, is the word get out through the biking community? Is that how these races gain popularity, by within the biking community? There's not really a marketing plan, bikes, gravel grinders are us, that we can,
Yeah, so there's always opportunity with, traditional marketing for any organization to try and leverage. The reality is that it's the experience and the fear of missing out and the word of mouth that makes an event successful. And so our goal when we produce an event is making sure that that experience has so many opportunities built into it for people to take pictures and to sing about the experience that they've had on course. For instance, in the Pine Nuts, we had a hot dog stand at one of the aid stations, and that experience was something that was just raved about afterwards. And so people talk about that stuff, and that's much stronger marketing for us than traditional paid advertisements, which really just people kind of are blind to. When we talk about reasonable growth, we're probably looking between 30 to 45% year over year as we monitor and expand. There's probably an opportunity for us to double the size of the event next year, but the reality is we need to do research and development with the capacity at aid stations, the impact on the roads and the trails, the impact to traffic, and all of that stuff as we move forward. So just doubling it isn't always the right formula. And it also allows us to make sure that there's urgency in signing up for the race early. If we don't leverage that urgency by making sure that the cap is met soon, then we lose a little bit of that grasp on the urgency. And so there's a balance to be struck. But what we see is between, like 30 and 45% is where we want to top off each year.
no, I think my opinion is you take I don't know if I would double it after the first year. You mentioned creating demand, and sometimes you do that by limiting the participants, and the word gets out. So I appreciate the fact that you're just not trying to capitalize on it, double it every year. On the survey, this is just a silly question. The lowest score you got in the survey was on the finish line, and that was a 3. What can be so bad about a finish line? And I would think everybody would be looking forward to getting there.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good question. I don't really know. That person didn't actually make a comment about the finish line. They just marked it, but a lot of them also marked it as a 5. So what I showed you was a subset of about 140 something results, and they were kind of all over the place. But yeah, I mean, it's one thing or another. Somebody maybe came across the finish line and they didn't hear their name called out, and that was important to them. We've called everybody else's name out, and so it could have been a miss from the announcer, and it's something as simple as that. Other people mentioned that the finish line was too far away from the actual race finish. So this event finished at the top of the trail. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name of it. But the trail that we finished right near Highway 50
Clear Creek?
was the actual Clear Creek Trail,
Yeah.
where we finished and had the timing booth. So people finished, got their time, and then they actually had to roll down Highway 50. And so in the early stages of producing this event, we were trying to negotiate our way through Old Clear Creek Road to Fuji Park, but we haven't been able to bridge that opportunity yet. And so there was, some people didn't necessarily like riding down Highway 50 at the end of the event. And so by and large, it was not that big of a deal, but a couple people wished that, they had finished in Fuji Park. At the end of the day, that's not a make or break for this event because the experience was so great that, a couple miles on the highway with a pretty wide shoulder and rolling into Fuji Park is not the thing that sticks with you.
If it was me, it was complaining because the finish line was too far away.
Right.
From the starting
Right.
line, that would have been.
I've
my
never
complaint.
seen a finish line, so.
If you can't see it from the starting line, I'm
Yeah.
out.
Um, Any other questions from the board? Board Member Reynolds?
Thank you. David, give me some context for this. What other kind of events do we make an investment like this in? And there's that other, for instance, the bicycle race that's been canceled the last 3 years.
The Carson City Off-Road.
Yeah, what's been our investment?
Carson City Off-Road was on average about $70-something thousand a year from just us. The city was also putting in another $70,000. And one thing I would say, kudos and credit to Carlos, the city did not invest directly in the event. Carlos actually paid for any city services that were required as a part of this event. So it's a little bit of a different structure than the Carson City Off-Road. So as you'll see when we get to the next agenda item, our cost for the 22 event was $23,000 through the sponsorship agreement. We really, being honest, Member Reynolds, all of the other events that we are supporting are actually endorsed events. And so any costs that come by way of Parks and Rec are covered through the interlocal agreement. So very small, minimal investments in other, like the, Motorcycle Officer Challenge, we put $1,000 into that. So really there's nothing on this magnitude cost-wise other than Carson City Off-Road before. I think probably, Stu, our largest sponsorship after this one would be Nevada Day at $5,000. So these two bike events are kind of unique.
Board Member Giomi?
Yeah, I would just add that I'm only one board member on the Board of Supervisors, but I don't think you'll see the city spending another $70,000 on a downtown event like that again. I mean, I think it was an opportunity that presented itself at one time, and who knows what would have happened if the pandemic had kept going. But this agreement is written much better than that agreement in terms of protections, in my mind, from someone responsible for taxpayer dollars. This is a much better written agreement. I don't think you'll see an agreement like that last agreement again. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. A couple of things. I like the idea that if we agree to this, it sounds like a positive thing, that it is an annual event it's planned for a number of years rather than something that's a one-off or maybe next year or maybe 5 years from now. And I also appreciate the fact that this kind of an audience is one that would enjoy Carson, and you could see them coming back on their own time. Thank you.
Any other questions for Carlos from the board? Well, Carlos, thank you very much for the presentation. Very, very nicely done. We'll move on to item 10, a discussion and possible action regarding a proposed sponsorship agreement with Bike Monkey Inc. for the 2023 through 2027 Stettina's Pay Dirt Carson City rides for a total amount of $125,000 and to authorize the CTA Executive Director to execute the agreement. David, if you might.
Yeah, I'll
walk
just give a
them through
quick.
the background of the agreement.
Yeah, so this is, and thanks to DA Reese for helping put this together. So this is kind of the newest template format that we have for large-scale events. As Member Giomi mentioned, we have a lot of provisions and protections in there that ensure all the permitting, anything that's required to put this event on, that all of those things have been put into place before a payment is ever made. And obviously, if the event doesn't take place, we have a provision where that money, if we paid it out, would come back to us. So what you see in front of you is, again, the newest version with a lot of details around the promotional consideration. So that goes both ways, right? So in this case, what Bike Monkey is going to do for us, as well as what we're going to do for them in support of the event each year. So I'm happy to entertain any questions, if there are any, on the new format.
Board Member Giomi?
I have two questions on section 4, which is on page 4. Subsection H is in Henry. I'll wait till you all get there. That talks about not soliciting marijuana-based companies. Was that a request of us? Was that a request of
That's from me.
him?
No, that's me.
Okay. And the reason is just,
The reason, I just don't want to have our events affiliated with drug
Okay.
companies or,
so if that's the case,
paraphernalia.
should we not say that event owner will not accept marijuana-based companies? Because it's possible that he could not solicit it, but still get
sure.
a sponsor. All you're telling him is he can't solicit it.
Yeah,
Doesn't mean he couldn't accept it.
yeah, I think that's a great change.
So if our goal is to not have a marijuana-based company being a sponsor, then I think it should say event owner will not accept marijuana-based companies as a sponsor.
Yes, and Stacy, obviously, this is a decision for you all as the board. That's just a personal issue, concern I have. So I leave it up to the 5 of you to ultimately decide
Yeah.
how you feel about that. But I like that change, Todd.
Well,
if you're-
I mean, I don't know. I mean, if Carlos had said to us that I can't do this without accepting, that, it isn't that big a deal to me. I mean, if and perhaps we would just say if you got a marijuana-based company, you'd have to get Doritos as a co-sponsor. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. But I'm fine with the language suggested, as I said there. And then in I, it said actual rider count versus tickets sold, correct? So I want that to be clear, because this time we were well over 600. He was well over 600 for sales, but 500 in terms of actual rider count. So we want that to read rider count, correct?
Yeah, so Stacy, this is a bit of a change from the contract before with the Carson City Off-Road Group, because it wasn't the actual number of
Right,
people, it
that's
was
what I was asking.
registrations.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we want these people to actually be here,
Correct.
having ridden in the race.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
wanted to point that out because I think that's
Absolutely.
important from an organization whose goal it is to put people in hotel rooms. So,
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
So,
Yeah,
so that's important.
yeah.
No, I agree with that, and I would, when we're ready, I'll happy to make a motion with those changes that I read.
Any other questions from the board? Well, then I will ask for a motion.
Sorry, I had one other tab. Just, I guess a question in general for Todd. Other boards or committees that I sit on, when an agreement comes before the full body, the signator of that agreement is typically the chair of that body. Board of Supervisors, Carson Water Subconservancy. So it has not been that way here. Is there a reason for that in general? Does it matter?
That's a great question. I don't know if there's a specific reason for it. To answer that, I'd defer a little bit to Director Peterson. As far as one or the other, I don't feel there's any infirmity in the contract legally, either having the director sign it or having the chair of the board sign it. So if the board would prefer that the chair sign it, then we can change the contracts that way.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand consistency, because at our Board of Supervisors meetings, if someone other than the mayor is signing an agreement, the motion specifically calls out the authorization by the body for that individual to sign. And that's not the expected motion here. Again, it's just a general comment. I don't, as you said, it doesn't really invalidate the contract, and obviously it's approved, but just for consistency purposes, it's the only reason that I bring it up.
Stacy, could I jump in for just a second?
Please do.
So when we do the contracts with the
Mhm.
city's contract document, so anything over 50K, Mike has been listed on there, the chair has been
Okay.
on. This was sort of a different document because we created this from scratch as a sponsorship agreement. But in the motion, it's giving me the authorization to execute the agreement. Do you see that on the top of the page 1? So that's why we called it out in the actual motion, just based on the way that this
Okay,
sponsorship
well,
agreement was
it's not,
written.
the motion is further down on the agenda report,
Oh, okay.
and the motion does not indicate that. It does say it in the title. And I'm not trying to be
Oh,
nitpicky.
yeah.
I'm just indicating that there's inconsistencies
I see what
between
you're saying. Yeah, it's not in
various
down
bodies
below.
that I'm on that
Mhm.
don't do it the same way.
Yeah, we certainly could add Mike too, we could put us both on
I
there.
think we should be consistent and,
Yeah.
and even, we're kind of splitting hairs. This is over
Mhm.
50,000.
It is, yeah,
It is
you're right.
over.
It's 25,000.
Yeah,
per
let's, Todd, can we do like, on the larger contracts where it has the board chair on as well?
Yes, we can.
Let's,
I can put that in the motion here, so.
Sure.
it's-
I think that's a great suggestion. You're right. 'Cause
Okay,
yeah, the dollar amount.
sorry, Chair, I'm ready if you'll indulge me. Is that a yes? I was just getting the look. It's the same look that I'm giving you. It's over the top of the glasses look. Yeah, it's the same look. All right, I move to approve the Destination Sponsorship Agreement, CTA SA 2305, as presented, with the exception of changes to Section 4, subsection H, that will now read, event owner will not accept marijuana-based companies as a sponsor. And with the addition of the CTA's chair as signator on page 9.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Oh, thank you, Carlos. With that, we'll move on to item 11, presentation and discussion regarding the Visit Carson City 2023 Communications Plan. David?
Thank you, Chair Jones. Thank you, Carlos, again, if you're still able to hear us, thank you. You've got another
Yes,
5
thank you
years
all
ahead
for
of
the
you, sir.
support. Yep, we're very excited. Can't wait to come back. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right, so we punted this item from last month to this month, and we have Nicole on, I think I see her, and we've got Ryan and Julie here in the room, so I'll kind of let them introduce themselves, but these three wonderful folks from our KPS3 team, and they are going to walk through the fiscal 23 communications plan for the board today. So whoever wants to get it started, get it started.
I'm driving.
Dave.
Oh, Nicole, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thanks, everyone. We really appreciate the opportunity to present to you today. I wanted to introduce Julie Ardito, who's our new Vice President of Public Relations at KPS3, and Ryan Sullivan, our account manager, who are there with you in person today. We're really thrilled to be working with Visit Carson City again this year, and really excited to be capitalizing on the tremendous success and results that we saw this last year. So before we dive in, Julie and Ryan, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I'm ready to drive. Nicole, whenever you need to.
Oh, perfect. I couldn't hear Julie, so sorry. I don't know if the mic wasn't hooked up, but you can hear me okay? Perfect. All right. So, is the presentation up?
Yeah, we have it up. Can you see it, Nicole?
You may not be able to see it, Nicole, but you'll just have to let Ryan know to advance to the next
I
slide.
can
Oh,
see it now.
perfect. Okay, great.
Yeah,
And
it's a
then,
little
yeah,
delayed, so it's okay.
Ryan and Julie, don't forget if you want to talk, make sure you push the button and light turns green. Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, go ahead and go to the first page, Ryan. All right. So our Visit Carson City communication strategy is really designed to build and leverage relationships and partners that we have with the media while communicating efficiently and effectively with targeted audiences to tell Carson City's story. So we do this by using public relations, content strategy, as well as social media to complement one another and amplify our message. So one approach for doing this is by developing different objectives that we've outlined here in the plan to optimize our reach and engage people in support of our goal for compelling storytelling and narrative. We do this with a digital first mindset. So we use analytics and statistics we are getting back from the website as well as SEO to help drive our content and our narrative and really connect with brand-centric messaging. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Brian. So our goal this year is to really leverage and look at the new integrated marketing campaign that Visit Carson City is embarking upon and really helping complement that with a strategic communications plan to really weave the destination's narrative throughout third-party media coverage. Our aim is to have reputable vetted media and social media influencers expound on the value, history, and experiences available to travelers in the center point destination. So our proactive earned media communication strategy combined with comprehensive marketing plan really will aim to promote further brand awareness for Carson City as a destination, thereby increasing travelers to the region. Next slide. So we have really looked at the different target audiences and have narrowed two down. So our first target audience is the older weekday traveler. So through our research, we know that retirees are avid travelers. They like to avoid crowds and really value relaxation and rejuvenation. They're also really interested in a multi-generational travel experience, finding a destination that the whole family can come to and enjoy. Baby boomers are really those that are traveling. They travel on average of 4 to 5 times per year and are also more likely to be able to afford to travel comfortably. So they're our first primary target audience as part of the strategic communications campaign. Our next, if you want to switch slides, Ryan, are millennial families. So millennials are traveling more than any other generation. So we know that they are placing much more emphasis on experiences. So really focusing on quality time, relaxation, getting outside. And then they also are really interested in areas that they can travel to domestically. It's easy to get to, it's affordable, they can drive there by car. So we've narrowed them down as our second primary audience for this campaign. There are also some niche audiences that we've outlined on the next slide. Business travelers, railway buffs, mountain bikers, as to the last presentation, capital chasers, and Highway 50 trekkers. So these are also audiences that we're not eliminating by saying they're not our primary focus. We're keeping them in mind as we think of stories and media opportunities as well throughout this plan. On the next slide, we've outlined a few objectives that we're really aiming for this year. The first is to obtain 36 stories throughout the year. So these are unique individual stories. So it's not one story that runs in 100 different publications, but we're really looking for 36 different stories that tell the narrative for Visit Carson City. We're aiming to achieve a publicity value of $500,000 and focusing on key target markets, which we'll outline in a few slides. We aim to do this by strengthening partnerships with Travel Nevada and our peer DMOs to really, again, leverage that center point destination and working together to achieve cooperative coverage. And then third, we really want to increase website traffic and hotel page conversions. So generated in part by referral traffic, either from a third-party media referral site, social media, or throughout some different search and content marketing coverage as well. On the next slide are some strategies for the plan this year. We really want to continue to forge media relationships with our local, regional, and national media. We had a really wonderful, steady drumbeat of communications this last year with different media across the country and in our key targeted markets. Many of them know about Carson City. Many have come and visited and are interested in experiencing it for themselves. It's really that ongoing and consistent communication and cadence with them to find the right story and the right fit at the right time that'll generate a media placement and coverage. So another thing we want to do this year is expand and expound on the authentic cultural and historical offerings in Carson City, really supporting the arts and culture program within Visit Carson City. So proactively sharing those stories about Carson City's stories past with the media who are really focused right now. Nostalgia is definitely a key trend for media, and they're looking to tell those historical offerings and experiences that people can have when they visit a destination. We want to invite relevant media from target markets for fan tours. This is something that we try to do monthly. So we try to invite media to come into the area, whether they're a traditional media outlet or a social media influencer, to experience Carson City for themselves in the hopes that they'll cover the destination throughout their social media platforms. And then they'll also write about it in one of the media outlets that they're on assignment for and or represent. We are also planning to explore some out-of-market activations, which we're really excited about, really bringing Carson City to some of these target markets to drum up some more excitement for the destination and make people aware of the fact that Carson City is an option they maybe haven't thought of before and would look to explore here in the future. And then, of course, collaborating with Travel Nevada and our neighboring DMOs to continue to leverage our partnerships when we bring media into the area so that they can experience the region and the destination as a whole. So for our tactics, we have quite a few. So what I thought I would do would be to highlight and focus on some of the new tactics that we've added this year. Some of these you'll see were tactics that we implemented this past year and really found success with, so we left them in. But what I wanted to call out, just given time, was really focusing on the new tactics we've highlighted. So the first here is working with Carson City to identify and organize media events surrounding key initiatives throughout the year, particularly with an eye towards arts and culture. So working with Deborah and her team to really talk about the different programs and events and exhibits that are happening as it relates to arts and culture in Carson City. The next, if you flip slides for me, Ryan, is to execute 2 out-of-market media activations and drive large-scale awareness of Carson City and predetermined markets. So we've decided that targeting an event, a guerrilla marketing event, if you will, in Lake Tahoe in the fall and then in the spring in Sacramento, where we're coming up with ideas for how we can reach large groups of people in these markets to make them aware of Carson City, and then also as a result get some social media coverage and get some additional media coverage as well. Another new thing that we're focusing on this year, a new tactic, is a partnership with Yelp. We are working with Yelp's Northern Nevada community manager to host an in-market Yelp Elite event. This event will be targeted in October. where we're looking to bring Yelp Elite members from a sister market into the area to experience businesses and lodging properties and the destination as a whole, in the hopes that they'll write reviews and talk to their following and fan base on Yelp about these different offerings here in Carson City. So this is something we've seen happen and work for other markets, and they were really excited to work with us. I will stress that this is free of cost, so the Yelp community manager isn't charging us a dollar amount, if you will, to work with these businesses. It's really just to further the Yelp platform and to get that community more engaged in Carson City. And so that brings me to the last tactic on this slide, is really leveraging Yelp's Northern Nevada Elite and their community that they already have to showcase Carson City hotels for staycations, perhaps in Northern Nevada, restaurants, events, and activities, and must-see attractions in the area. And then a few more new tactics that we're looking to explore this year on the next slide. We are looking to develop and disseminate physical, we're calling PR boxes or press kits, to media, basically as an invitation. So this is going to dovetail really nicely with the nostalgia campaign, and we're looking to put these press kits together and send them out as a formal invite to some of the key media that we've been communicating with, to kind of get out of their email inbox, which often can be so cluttered, and to really give them something like physical and tactical that they can like hold and review and see, and entice them to come visit Carson City. We're also going to be attending Travel Nevada's Rural Roundup, which returns again this year, to leverage partnerships and additional PR opportunities. And then we're planning to invite media through this press kit to a fall Halloween themed FAM in Carson City as well, to experience the destination. And then if you wanted to go to the targeted media slide, Brian. Here's where we really outline the media markets that we're targeting for both social media as well as members of our traditional media. So Lake Tahoe being a key market for us, knowing that people are flooding Lake Tahoe and they're going into the destination, but really looking to bring them down into Carson City to experience it, not just for, a day, but, overnight, and to come and experience a different side of Nevada that maybe they haven't explored before. And then also different DMAs, including Vegas, Los Angeles, Sacramento, Stockton, Modesto, San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose. And then secondary markets being Phoenix, Arizona, Portland, Seattle, Tacoma, and Salt Lake City. And then on the next slide, we put together, and you'll notice that our targeted media is very much in line with the targeted audiences that we outlined earlier on. These are the publications that we believe that those audiences, the millennials and the baby boomers, are reading. So we put together some wish list targeted media, as well as really the focus that we'd like to have for our communications this year. And then next, I'll talk a little bit about our content strategy for the year. So our content strategy really helps connect visitors with a deeper and more personal level of Carson City. So it really gives them gives people an opportunity to read about Carson City from a first-person narrative or perspective. So it's when we put on our journalism hats and approach content as it relates to audiences and how they engage. We believe authentic and curated content based on the key values of as a brand also help drive people to the website through search. You want to move next slide, Ryan? We do this because informed keyword search volume is what we base our content calendar off of. So we're seeing what people are searching for across the web and how they're landing on Visit Carson City's website. So we are targeting people based on those topics through our blog and through our content calendar. Our content and strategic communications team work really closely together with search teams to ensure that we're writing this captivating content. Our primary focus is on main attraction categories that are also reflected on the homepage and the website. So you can see those here. And then finally, for content strategy, the lovely thing about having such native and organic content on the site is that it can be used for multiple purposes. So we're repurposing this content, not just on the blog or on the site, but we're also using it for e-newsletters, which are generating attention, using it in social media, and we're using it to pitch media very specific to that content that we're putting out on the site. So really our priority is to make sure that these efforts are all synced up across channels, because once that happens, it's really synergistic and really lines up nicely for maximum exposure. And then the next few pages of our presentation outline what our content calendar looks like for this year. You'll see we did, last year we had 1 topic per month. This year we have 2 or 3 per month. Again, really hoping to amplify some of these messages and then use them across our different channels. So social media, media relations, pitching, the e-newsletter, etc. So I won't go over them in detail, but you can flip through and see the different pieces of content that we have lined up with the calendar, and I'd be happy to answer any questions as it relates to that as well later on. And then Ryan's going to be talking a little bit about our social media strategy for the year. Lydia continues to manage that for Visit Carson City, but she's out, so he's going to take that over today.
Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate it. Hello, board. Thanks for letting me speak a little bit. So as Nicole mentioned, Lydia and Zach work on the social media for Visit Carson City, but I think good thing that Nicole mentioned is a lot of this content can be repurposed and reorganized into different facets. So just as we make those blog posts, those can also be shared on social media to kind of gain more exposure, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram, to really get to those audiences. So with this social media strategy that we work on, and we do work pretty closely with Lydia as well on ideas to really make sure that everything has a cohesive message. So whether you're going from the website or you're going to, let's say, Facebook, everything makes sense. Everything's kind of like really dialed in. We want to make sure that, especially for Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest, that there is engaging photos. Like I said, events are clearly listed in Facebook, for example, but really that the social media should be that first piece that kind of takes you, maybe you look at that page, but then takes you to the website so you can get more of that information. So you may start clicking on an event, but then you will kind of go through a little bit more of like, well, what else is on the Visit Carson City website? Whether it's you're looking at hotels, maybe the next thing you do is you go to restaurants too and start looking through the restaurants. And so really that's where I think all that content and everything from PR to social to what we do with the website really all kind of trickles into each other. Let me kind of controlling 2 computers at once right now. So again, like I mentioned, this focus is going to approach on the quality of posts, paying special attention to the unique engagement opportunities of our posts. I think one of the most important things is with the new campaign activation that we're doing, the nostalgia campaign that we've worked on this last year and really laying it out now. That will be a big piece going forward with a lot of social media, especially with Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But we really want to make sure that there's that piece of content that really is hitting on those brand pillars, but then even the content that we are used to, whether it's like an annual event that's going on within Carson City or highlighting Stewart or any other type of event or restaurant, that it does tell that story of rich history, heritage, family friendly, and what have you. And I also think that the other thing is with Visit Carson City, continuing to manage that social media content and really looking at what viewers and what users are engaging with the most and what they're going to. I think that also dictates through that engagement of whether a post is being liked a lot, shared a lot, or commented on. That will help us kind of look at what people are looking at as well too. And then on the next slide, really the goals are for social media is to promote those special events that drive room rates by way of data-informed special event strategy. So again, I think, like I mentioned, really looking at some of those special events, whether it's, obviously Nevada Day, but even other events that we have heard about earlier today, to really make sure that those are across social media are cohesive and have those ideas with a brand and tone. I think informing the audience is one of the best ways. Most, whether it's millennial or other demographics, really are engaged with their phones quite a bit. So making sure that when they're checking their social media, that there is that information they can get all in one place, so then they can go to the website and look pretty clearly. So that includes like events, activities, and attractions that are happening around the region. And then again, pushing to drive the room nights. And then as sort of a goal for just social media, having a combined rate of 10% audience following with Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram and Pinterest. And I think just looking at engagement and like users with social media this last year, I think a lot of whether it's the fam events that we've had or having like other influencers really have helped as well too. I think that kind of shows these, especially maybe these influencers, they do kind of have already a driving audience. So when they're posting about Carson City through, maybe it's a mother and her kids and they're going, traveling and they're sharing this information, I think that kind of speaks to their audience a little bit and they can see almost picture themselves being there in Carson City, maybe doing this with their kids or what have you. So I think continuing to keep leveraging that with, again, from the PR side, but then also making sure that that goes to the social media side as well. And then lastly, continuing to work with the multimedia content coordinator to create compelling, beautiful content that sparks social engagement and attract new followers. I think, again, this is where this really does speak to, I know Lydia with, kind of manages a lot of the social media, but I think this is also where KPS3 comes in as well too, and we work together, whether it be Nicole from the PR side or even our design and our creative team to really make sure like those assets are all cohesive, all make sense and really do work and really make something that's engaging for followers. And then as Nicole mentioned earlier, we always do kind of look through this communication plan and speak to Dave and Lydia just to make sure that everything's tracking well, everything looks good. We have a monthly report that we put together as well. This is geared solely towards more of that PR effort that we do, since Visit Carson City handles more of that social media, but we do track our goals, make sure everything's tracking well, and any new developments as well. So I will open it up to Dave or any other questions too.
Very comprehensive, targeted plan. I'll look forward to the monthly reports and next spring when we get our report card, I guess, of how this all worked out. But hits all our brand pillars, hits all the areas that we talk about as a board. So with that, I'll open it up to the other board members. Board Member Rader.
Hi, Bobby Reeder for the record. Yes, excellent plan. And I just had two suggestions to consider. One is for your niche audiences, if you might want to consider the Stewart Father's Day Powwow. That's an annual event at Stewart Indian School every June. And it attracts usually 3,000 people. And all of those people are, a lot of them are dancers or their family members, vendors, as well as participants, as well as the tribal communities within the area that all come here, and they all stay at the hotels, they shop, they eat at the restaurants. It really does bring a lot of dollars into the Carson City area. So I just wanted to throw that out as a consideration. It's a free event, it's a family-friendly event, it's something that attracts a certain kind of people who are interested in that particular topic, but just an idea. And then also you talked about content.
That's great. Thank you.
Sure. Content and narratives, and I just wanted to suggest for Stewart, we do have first-person narratives of the students who attended the school, and those are podcasts on our website. They're also in our museum exhibits. So if you're looking for first-person stories to talk about Stewart, we have those available. We can provide those to you. Thank you.
That
Chair,
would be great. I think that could be a really good pitch. Thank you.
Chair, may I just ask a follow-up of Bobby? Bobby, how would you characterize, looking at the way that we've identified our niche audiences, business travelers, railway buffs, mountain bikers, is there a way that you might characterize those folks that come out for the powwow, they're interested in engaging with American Indian history? Is there a way that we could put them down as a niche audience? Is there something to encapsulate those types of people who do attend powwows? Would something make sense to you for us to
Other than
add?
powwow,
Yeah,
powwow people.
right.
It's a big,
right.
Dare I say, industry sort of.
Mm,
And the one at Stewart is pretty well known in the
Right.
area. So, yes, American Indian culture, but really it's the powwow itself that
Okay.
attracts people.
okay. So maybe we stick with that then.
Yeah, I would
Makes
agree. It's
sense.
the historical people
Okay.
who find that,
It does. Maybe it's too
This-
specific.
mhm.
It is it's almost taking niche and then going down, drilling in another level. But
It's a sub niche.
yeah, so, sub niche. I like that. Okay, thank you.
Board Member Reynolds?
Is there any industry information on, well, let's say if we were going to track a visitor to Carson City back, when might they have first become aware that Carson City even existed as someplace they might consider visiting? Is this something that happens a year or 2 years in advance in general? Is it months in advance? Especially when we look at our, we've got a target market of millennials and retired folks and all. Is there any industry information that says, okay, in general, the work that we do this year is going to have results next year or 2 years from now? And I know there's residuals in any effort we do. I'm just kind of curious, is there any kind of, any kind of feeling on that, or any kind of numbers on something like that? Am I clear enough in the question I'm asking?
Yeah,
Okay.
totally. Yeah. And I know it definitely depends on every industry, depending on, like what it does. I will say, I think, especially with maybe more of the younger audience, when they do see some of these trips that whoever they're following, influencers or even friends or family, and I think especially maybe even some of these like local places, that's why we are looking at with like the Yelp events and even like some of like the activations within like Lake Tahoe and Sacramento. We are looking for hopefully these people to kind of be more aware of Carson City, to be able to make that trip a little bit easier and closer. I think it really does. It probably depends. I would say it would be nice, like, more of an increase, would happen sooner. But I do know, like, it's one of those things where you're planting the seeds for like more of like the events to really kind of like set in and more people to see it. And I don't know, Nicole, if you have like an additional like insight, but I do remember, and you guys may remember from this past spring with Brian Walker when he presented some of those like social findings. Now, granted, that was geared towards the campaign and like the research that he did with the focus groups, but it does, on average, it does take people about 6 to 8 months to kind of like make some of those travel plans a little bit closer. I think now with like the pandemic, I don't want to say ending, but I think more people, encouraged to travel a little bit more. More people are willing to do that a little bit quicker. So I think that's why we are looking at some of those places like Lake Tahoe that attract a lot of Bay Area people to come. So we can really kind of plant that seed for them for maybe their next trip to hit not only to maybe that annual Lake Tahoe trip, but then also come down to Carson City, but then especially Sacramento, where that drive is not that long. And so people really can make a full like weekend out of it, because we do know that at least a minimum of 2 overnight stays is what is preferred for most people when they come to Carson City. So that's something that I think can also entice people as well.
Any other questions from the board? David?
Oh, I would just say thank you to the team. I think they did a great job, and I'm looking forward to this fiscal year because we do have some really cool stuff coming, and the activations, you guys, I don't know, the board, you might think of those as pop-ups, but these are in-market activations that I think are going to be really cool. And the only thing I might just add to what Ryan said, I think that 6 to 8 months from some of the research that we did do with Ryan London starting literally a year ago, I think, with some of the strategic research, cutting that timeline down to 3 or 4 months, is what we're looking at, to engage these folks to not, yes, maybe come down for the day in Carson City, but then see what we have to offer in hopes of having them stay. I think sometimes it takes that day trip first before you can convince somebody, hey, this is a great place. Why don't we stay here? And we're only half an hour from Reno and a half an hour from Virginia City and half an hour from Genoa and other areas of Douglas. Same thing with the lake. So we're planting these seeds, right, to kind of start this transition. And this is the year where we're really going to hit hard, with that messaging. So, but thank you. Oh, go ahead, Julie. Sorry. Yeah.
It's green, so I can say this. But I did want to add just briefly what you said, Dave. With this nostalgia campaign, this is the first integrated marketing campaign for Visit Carson City. So what you're hearing from us is a build on media relations, social media, and content generation. And with those three working together, it really is, and we kind of talked about this, it's gentle pressure relentlessly applied. It's going to build over time, but it's going to be an extended push right away. So everything that we do in this plan will be tracked and marketed and reported. So that will show the results quicker than late. So we'll come back for that.
No, I'm glad. I totally forgot. Yeah, this is truly, you guys, this is our first fully integrated effort across all the BR, direct media buying, which obviously we had our media plan, I think, at the July meeting, but all of this is going to tie together messaging wise, and we still, brand positioning is there, the brand pillars, we're still operating, that part hasn't changed. It's just now all of the messaging, we're getting closer and more integrated. So yes, thank you for mentioning that, Julie. Yeah.
Stu?
Yeah, I just want to say that I've been in contact with some of the properties, and our location, as we've talked about for years, the proximity to Tahoe, we are seeing just as the popular events become, spread out again. For instance, the Tahoe Shakespeare Festival, we're actually seeing people come down, staying overnight, that are going to the festival. As we see Tahoe become very crowded, more expensive, the short proximity from Carson City to Tahoe, we see more and more people making that drive down with they don't have any problem at all. So even something like the Shakespeare Festival, we're seeing more people come down, spending the night or a couple nights in Carson and then going back up to Tahoe. So I just wanted to say that.
I guess that's a good point, Stu. And I wonder at some point how in the marketing strategy we can tag on to that with hopefully very little effort. I mean, you've got all these events between Hot August Nights and the Rib Fest in Sparks and the Reno Tahoe Odyssey and the Shakespeare Festival and all of those things that are already doing all their own marketing. But if there's just a way to sort of tag on to that and say, hey, while you're at Reno Tahoe or at Hot August Nights, come on down and spend a night or two in Carson. And so maybe that's a strategy that, we can glom onto at some point in the future, because it seems like low-hanging fruit to me.
Absolutely.
And Member Giomi, that's definitely something we're looking to do when we work with and talk to our different DMO partners, both around the lake as well as the RSCBA and some of the different partners in the area. That's definitely conversations we're planning to have this year. So if they're sending media to the Shakespeare event, maybe they want to spend a day or two in Carson City. So we're looking for those partnerships for sure.
Well, thank you, KPS3, for spending part of your afternoon with us. I just learned something in my marketing meetings. I always say we're in the business of guided discovery, but now I understand it's gentle pressure relentlessly applied. Is that the new?
Well, you need to ask Dave if you can use that because he's adopted that saying. I think so, though.
trademarked it.
You
So for a
trademarked
small
it, so-
fee, Gold Dust West and its associated properties may use that.
Yes, Mike.
But, yeah. But thank you. It was a nice presentation. Yeah, with that, we'll go to item 12, monthly non-action items for discussion only. David?
Thank you, Chair. In the interest of time, 12A Executive Director's Report, I really don't have anything for this month to report on, so we'll go ahead and move on to 12B, Transient Occupancy Tax, Actual versus Forecast. So this is our final set of numbers, you guys. Chris has done an amazing job of getting everything in for this meeting. So you see we ended the year at just over $26.7 million in total collections, taxable collections. That's 27.39% above what we budgeted for in May of 2021, and it's 31.25% over fiscal 21's actual number. So incredible year. And look at that large number that we had July, 3.762 million last July. We're probably going to beat that, I think, handily this past month. So we're continuing to do very well on the room tax collection side. So, ADR up, RevPAR up, very excited, about the numbers. So I think next month, Chris, right, we'll share where we're at least for July. So this will be the last full report ending fiscal 22. Thank you, guys. Great job. So any questions on the room tax collections report? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and move on to 12C, Events and Sales Update. Stu Wexler, take it away. It's his birthday tomorrow, by the way, if anybody wants to give him a shout out.
Thank you. He's not letting me forget that. So, Stu Wexler with Visit Carson City. So just outlining some of the events, we're going to start with an event that most of you are probably familiar with, and that's coming up towards the end of this month, and that's the Carson City Outlaw Flat Track at Fuji Park. They've had it over the last couple years. Last year with the fires and the smoke and everything that happened, the evacuations, they actually still had a good turnout. And I don't have the results for lodging from last year. Going forward from now on, we will have those results. A lot of the surveys that were taken were more like the people coming in from different areas, and the majority were from California that attend this race and event. And they are putting their survey together too that is going to be in conjunction with lodging, where everyone's staying, how they're making their reservations like we've done with some of the others. So that, I think, is a big draw, and I think this year will be even a larger event. And then what's really nice is we're going to have the 19th annual Carson City Motorcycle Officer Challenge. And it's going to be 3 days and in September. And they're actually looking to include a lot of the outlined rural areas. And they're looking like next year to bring in a lot of officers from the Vegas area. The majority of them are going to be coming in from Lyon County, Reno, Washoe County, but they are looking to expand. And I think if there's no interruptions going forward, I think they'll be able to really get a draw. Even some California cities that are close to our area, they're looking to draw that. And we actually are starting to see a lot of lodging properties. As families come down, they'll spend a few nights down here. So we're starting to see a lot of hotel reservations being made. I sent out some RFQs to all the properties, sending the contact back to the officer in charge of that, Matt Smith. So as that comes, we'll see the results from that event. And then we're having an event in Labor Day. We actually had it back in May. It's the Battleborn Blades. It's the sword fighting contest. It's going to be held this time at the community center. This is an international one that is looking for, it's going to be a women's tournament. And I was just within contact, and everything's getting ready. I'm about to put out some RFQs. This has become very popular. David and I went to the last one. It was pretty amazing to watch everyone practice and just see, and they had instructors showing the last minute tips. So this is going to be on Labor Day. Yeah, like everything else, it's going to be very, very busy at Labor Day, and this one's going to be at the community center. And Eric, who's at the community center, actually participates himself. He's been involved in this for quite a while. So I think as this goes forward, it can be really exciting. I think the footprint and the draw on the international level can be really great exposure to Carson. And then we are working on the Carson Ridge Disc Golf Course. They're looking to have a tournament really for the first time in our area in October. And we're going to, as we start to focus on bringing in these tournaments, we're going to see more and more folks coming in from different areas. Our course is rated one of the highest in our area, even compared to Lake Tahoe, the Washoe Valley. And we did go out to the course, as you mentioned before. We're going to meet with them again, and it's pretty amazing what they've done. And just some of the holes that overlook Highway 50 and the Carson Ridge Mountains are extremely beautiful. So we'll find out more as we meet with them. We're going to meet along with City and Parks and find out more about that. But it reaches over 100,000 professional ultimate golf players. And then this is really what I've been working on for a while. We are working to bring rugby into Carson City. And at this one here, we are looking at the USA versus the Philippines teams in Carson City, and we're looking at next July 8th. And we're actually looking at using the high school. Carson City High School, the football field is already set up. It's perfect. They came up, they looked at it. They actually said that Carson City High School football field has some of the best turf that they've seen even in the California areas. And it was just renovated recently, the beginning of the summer. So just to give you an idea of, just a brief history, it was formed in 1953. It's officially sanctioned. Now, I honestly don't know that much about rugby. I'm learning. I've watched it, have no idea how their score is. we'll learn more about that. You know, I just know football, American football starting soon, so that I know. But it is growing, and it's growing in California. It's growing in Las Vegas. It's growing in Salt Lake City. These are huge gateways for the leagues and their training for some of our players. And as you can see, they come from all over the area, Australia, New Zealand. And what we're looking at here in Carson City is an impact that will make Carson City, I think, very, the great exposure to Carson City on an international level. You can see California's already merged with Utah, and California's rugby is amazingly huge. And what they're looking at too is just some of the exposure that we'll get here in Carson City. I have not read some of these magazines, but global rugby publications, logos, our logo would be on all the shorts, sideline advertisement through live stream and posters, jerseys, staff uniforms, all exposure for Visit Carson City and Carson City. And tagged posts from all the 120 players, and then photos and all the events and from the events. And then they are going to be broadcasting these games internationally through Flow Sports, which I'm not that familiar with, but I'll find out more. And you can see there's like the social media, obviously for any event is huge, but this reaches a 2.2 million, 30,000 new subscribers being added per month, and this is rugby. And they're looking at they want to do a 3-year contract because they take time to get going. The first couple of years, as the media gets out, footprint gets out, and exposure gets out for Carson, this will bring more international travels. And you can just see just some of the views and the attendance reels and the top tier players. As this becomes more, they'll get more of the top tier players, more professional players coming from our country and on an international level. So I think once I'm meeting with the school district to work on the high school football field to secure that for July of next year. So, and that actually looking pretty good. So any questions on anything?
Anything for Stu? Yeah, this is I'll just say, a huge opportunity for Carson City. We're going to be in a position where 5,000 people they're looking at, filling into the Carson City high school bleachers. And we'll be looking at partners, I think, with the surrounding communities just to house these folks from a hotel perspective.
Yeah,
So-
and the fact that we're close to Tahoe, close to San Francisco, that's a real benefit for us. They're actually looking in bringing charter planes into Carson Airport as well. So they don't even have to go to the Reno Tahoe. And I just think that with the exposure and the closeness to Vegas, a lot of Vegas players come up. Salt Lake City is a big gateway for rugby right now as well as East. Elko, that's all becoming huge.
No, I think it's great that we're looking at more non-traditional sporting activities, rugby, disc golf. I mean, they're really popular.
Yeah, changing it up from our traditional, I mean, we're always going to have our traditional sports, but, we want to look to the diverse and as things change, new events, new sports.
Thanks.
Thank you, Stu. Appreciate it. With that, let's go ahead and move on to 12D, Arts and Culture Update. Deborah Soul, take it away.
Deborah Soul here. I'll make mine short and quick tonight. Wanted to talk to you, first of all, about the public art policy. The public art policy was reviewed by the Cultural Commission at their July meeting, and they have recommended approval of the document and that it be a living document. That is a document that can evolve easily and be updated whenever necessary as the Carson City Public Art Program is implemented. The Mark Twain mural project, the project panel for this new mural has had their first meeting and is now in the process of assessing some preferred locations for the new mural. The mural, excuse me, is being created to be showcased for the Mark Twain Days Festival in April 2023. So the project panel would like to see this mural, that is the first in the Downtown Historic Mural Series, be located in a prominent location, and they would also like to increase its size and budget if possible. The site that's currently being explored is the south-facing wall of the Nevada State Museum. That's on the Robinson Street side. The Nevada Arts Council is working with us and in support of this location, and the State Division of Museums and History is now looking into this option to determine if there's any historic preservation protections or other processes that might restrict this location. But it is the preferred location if it can be managed. Some of the other possible locations that have been identified include the south wall of the Northern Nevada Coin Shop and the south-facing wall on the, I think it's the Secretary of State building. You can see it there on this in the slide. So the project panel has also established an underlying theme for this mural, which will focus on the first time that Mark Twain signed his name on February 2nd, 1863, when he wrote a description of a large party and signed it, "Yours dreamily, Mark Twain." So,
Can I,
yeah.
when you're done, no, go ahead if you're.
I just wanted to add that the project panel for the Mark Twain mural is following the guidelines and the procedures that have been identified in the public art policy, even though that policy's not yet been formally adopted. They're anticipating that most of that will be adopted, and they're just following those procedures.
The, you said the south side of the Carson City coin, but you're showing the north side. Did you mean?
To be honest with
south
you,
side?
it could be either side.
Okay.
There's a blank wall on either side of that building, so
And the other one is Fourth and Carson, and you didn't mention that one. But
I didn't mention that. And that's the lounge to
yeah, the
the
hookah lounge
to the
next
south
Comma
of
Coffee.
Comma Coffee. That's right. There's a blank wall there.
My 2 cents, the Secretary of State's annex is not a state-owned building, it's a privately owned building.
Yes.
I would have a problem putting a mural on that building. That's all historic sandstone, quarried here in Nevada, like the state capitol. And I personally would have an issue with that. I would hate to cover that sandstone. I mean, I love the public art. I just would like to find something that's a little more modern to cover with art versus, I mean, to me, that building is art in itself. And covering it would be a concern that I would have, for what it's worth.
I do understand. I should probably add that the panel is planning that this mural will be a panel mural. It will not be directly
okay.
applied to any surface, so that it can be in the future changed up for something
Okay.
else or moved to a different location. So it's not a permanent fixture.
Well, as Rosanna Dana used to say, never mind.
Okay, the Art on the Trail project. Unfortunately, the scheduled date for that has been October 1st, and we're rescheduling it now until sometime in 2023. This is because the Parks and Rec Department, who is going to be partnering with us on this event, is currently focused on getting their new position in place, and they would like us to postpone the event until next year. So we have everything in place. All of the components and participants are lined up, and I will still endeavor to include them all. The artists and the instructors that I had mentioned and the parts of the events that have been planned are still going to be taking place. I also wanted to talk about regional arts and culture initiatives, which is an item from the 2022 Arts and Culture Strategic Plan. Under regional initiatives, the plan states that we will explore regional partnerships and collaboration that will expand local opportunities and further define Carson City's culture and character. And I'm working with the Sierra Arts Foundation, based out of Reno, who are really interested in expanding their involvement in Carson City and really being the regional agency that they were intended to be from the beginning. So they're interested in acting as the fiscal agent for the Mark Twain Days Festival, only in the capacity of allowing us to apply for grants, because most of the grants out there that we would be eligible for require a nonprofit agency to make the application. So we need to be working with someone who can do that. And that is actually a service that they provide to a lot of municipalities in central and northern Nevada. They're also interested in, and I'm working with the foundation in planning a regional open studio tour for next year. They typically hold their own open studio tour, and we hold our studio tour separately. They often are on the same weekend. It's happening again this year. They're not terribly happy with how many people they're drawing, and they think that it would be interesting and more successful if we create a partnership and have a regional open studio tour for next year that would combine both Carson City and Reno studio tours. So that's an initiative that I'll be working on with them. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you,
Anything
Deb.
from the board?
Yeah, sorry.
No? Thank you, Deborah.
No, good work, good work. They got some really cool things coming forward, so I like it. All right, with that, let's go ahead and move on to 12E, future agenda items. Does anybody want to have anything come up at next month's meeting? Okay, seeing none.
Maybe we could, I wonder if if we could invest in a billboard for a few months in Truckee where the traffic's being delayed.
They're expensive. Steve, for instance, the one that we do have in Tonopah, we're spending $450 a month. That's probably, it's a fraction of the cost on 50 and 80. Some of those billboards run 10, 12, even 15,000, depending on which one you're selecting, if it's digitized or the old school style billboard. We did talk about that when we kind of built out the media plan and figuring out the timing around the activations. We did have a conversation about next spring when we do the activation in Sacramento, that maybe we would get a billboard up to coincide with being in market. So we're looking at that, but it is very expensive to do. So it might be something that if we could get that grant funded through Travel Nevada, that we're going to explore as an option, because we didn't have that built into the original media buy budget as was presented a few months back. So, but yes, the great idea. Agreed. Okay, any other questions? Okay. 12F, our next meeting right here, September 12th at 4 p.m. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair.
Thanks, David. That takes us to item 13, CTA board comments, announcements, requests for information. Board Member Rader?
This is Bobby Rader. I wanted to invite everyone to the Second Remembrance Run that will be this coming Sunday, August 14th, for approximately from 1 to 5 o'clock. This is the run that the Yerington High School track athlete did last year. Last year he ran from Stewart to Yerington, which is 50 miles, with about 100 other people. They camped along the way. This year he wants to run from Yerington to Stewart. So they'll take off on August 13th from Yerington, camp overnight, and arrive at Stewart somewhere in the afternoon. We decided this year, because they're ending at Stewart, that we'll keep the museum open from 1 to 5 p.m. They also have invited a number of honored guests to speak. So we'll have some speakers. One of those speakers is Billy Mills, who is a really well-known Native Olympic athlete. Billy Mills provided the grant with his Dream Starter program for this run this year. And then Koo Stevens, the track athlete, is going to be going to Oregon State as a duck in the fall. So we'll have Indian tacos and refreshments and speakers, and they'll be very tired by the time they get to Stewart, but it should be a really good event. So I wanted to let you know about it. Thank you.
Bobby, how many runners are participating?
I don't know how many this year. Last year there were about 100. They have it set up so that they take breaks every 5 miles. Some people meet them along the trail and run just a little bit of the way. So I believe that both Billy Mills, I think he's going to run part of the way. He's getting older, but and also Koo's new track coach from Oregon State and his family are going to be running with them. So I'm not sure how many people are running, but it's a really important event, and it's intended to bring attention to boarding school survivors and their stories. So along the way, they tell boarding school survivor stories. Just an aside, there's a New York videographer named Paige Bethman who is making a documentary about Koo Stevens, and she actually moved to Reno this past year to follow him his last year in high school, and she's creating a documentary called Remaining Native. And so she'll be documenting the whole run again this year. She was also documented it last year. So watch for that whenever she releases the documentary. Thank you.
Any other comments? No? I'll ask one last time for public comment. Seeing none, we'll move on to the last item, and that's to adjourn, if I can get a motion. We're moved.